Hello and welcome to my new podcast. Today we've got a great guest on. We've got Andy Lumley-Holmes from Fintuity. We're going to be having a chat around Fintuity and what they're doing in the marketplace to try and disrupt things, really. But also as well going into detail with Andy regarding his career. He's had a great career that spans about nearly 25 years now, I think. Is that right?
Unfortunately.
Yep. So nearly 25 years across the world as well. So he's been in Hong Kong, he's been in Moscow, he's been in the States as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So Andy, thank you very much for coming along.
Good morning.
And
Thanks
joining us in Wakefield. It's nice, isn't it?
It's beautiful. Great place. Yeah, great spot. Yeah, really impressed. Yeah. Very nice.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
It's I don't think most people expect this when they come to Wakefield.
I was saying to you earlier, it's been 20 years since I last came here, with being abroad for 14, 15 of those, and the change here is incredible. And this place that they're building here, really great setup. So good things ahead, I think.
Yeah. So I will talk about this a little bit because I'm going to do a little promo for Wakefield, if you like. But
Sure.
What's going on around here is really interesting. So we've got as part of the levelling up regime, they put loads of money into an old cotton mill, and we've got the recording studio here. My offices are just across in another building, but it's absolutely great. They really kitted it out well, and we'll say that they're actually. I'm surprised because I didn't think that the levelling up regime was actually doing anything, but it looks like it actually has here. So that's good. Let's launch into it then, Andy.
Sure.
So tell me, how did you get into the industry, first of all?
Good question. Good question. So I was 20 years old. The easiest way to put it is that I was kind of told that I had to go and get a proper job. I was messing around. I was doing a few other bits and pieces. I was doing a few little businesses and bits and pieces on the side. I'd always been quite entrepreneurial, and decided it was time to go and get a proper job. So applied. I always had an interest in stocks and shares and investments. So I'd bought my first shares, a company called Minmet PLC. They were a gold miner. And I'd bought those when I was 16 years old through my parents' brokerage account. And really kind of always enjoyed that investment side. So had a look around at the time, Scarborough Building Society, as they were back then, who no longer exist. Had roles for in-house mortgage brokers in their in-house team, so dealing with incoming mortgage inquiries. So I applied for that, got that job, a week of training, and then pretty much straight onto the phones after that. So it was, it was really a combination of an enjoyment around investment and finance generally in that world, and then honestly just opportunity in terms of the local market.
And then we had a bit of a chat about it earlier, but one of the bits that I was really interested in was Edward Jones. Edward Jones for a couple of years, something like that.
About 2 years.
What was it like there?
Well, it was interesting. So I'd been working as a mortgage broker. So I'd moved from Scarborough Building Society into a self-employed mortgage broker environment, essentially through estate agents and doing estate agency work, and kind of wanted to take that next step into the IFA side of the business, so into the pension investment side of that business, and was looking around and found this opportunity with Edward Jones, which, for those that don't know, because they're no longer in the market, they're a US firm, big US stock brokerage firm, essentially. Had a really interesting model. So their model was basically they would put small local branches in lots of places and stock those with stockbrokers, essentially, and financial advisors.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. So rather than being like a big corporate, it was literally branch type based business. And they were looking for people to open an office for them in York. So there's me and a couple of other guys based in that area. Yeah, got the job with those guys, and it was interesting.
Sounds a bit loaded.
Some of the best sales training I ever had. Very much stock individual equity focus, so stocks, bonds, and kind of building portfolios for clients, for their retirement, for their investments, etc., etc. But very much individual equities rather than funds necessarily. But the model was really unique. So like the way you built your prospect bank, if you like, so the way you built your network was basically through going out into the local area and essentially door knocking. So you would have a 3-month period where you would go out every day, go down the street, pretty much door to door, and introduce yourself to people. So it was essentially, hey, my name's Andrew, I work for Edward Jones, I'm a stockbroker here. Just passing you my details, so if you ever need any help with anything, you know where to give me a call. We're going to be opening an office in Fulford very shortly, which was where my personal office was.
Yeah.
And you did that for 3 months. You were expected to go and get 20 to 30 contacts a day of people that you could return to. So essentially, by the end of that 3 months, you had a prospect bank of, around about 300 people-ish, something like that, in that local area that had agreed they may have a need for something at some point in the future. And, it was really interesting business model. Like I say, after that 3 months, you then opened your office in Fulford, and essentially you went back to those people and said, look, as we said, we've opened the office now. Is there anything that I can help you with? And I'm not sure if you could still do that these days, honestly.
Yeah.
I think people are possibly a little bit more reticent, a little bit more hesitant than they were back in those times, and
Probably with good reason. In fairness.
Probably with good reason,
in
fairness. Yeah. There's probably it's probably a little bit more difficult from a credibility point of view these days. But I think what it did teach was a huge amount of resilience in terms of what it actually takes to build a business and build a client bank.
How many, when you were doing that, when you got these contacts, the 30 contacts a day, how many people would you have to go and knock on the door of to get those 30 contacts?
Good question. Sometimes you'd be done by lunch, genuinely. Normally you were out from 9 till 5-ish most days, and I used to go out and do evenings. It's all well and good going out trying to speak to people from 9 to 5, but if people are at work, it doesn't really work.
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
So I used to do a couple of evenings a week where I'd go out and do kind of that. I always found that kind of 5 to 8 kind of period was quite productive.
Yeah.
Because people are back from work, they're not into kids' bedtime routines and things. You don't want to be disturbed after like 8 o'clock. No one's coming knocking your door. But that period between kind of 5 and 7, 5 and 8 was always quite lucrative. So I probably didn't learn that until after the first month. So my ratio got much better with a much shorter timeline towards the end of that period than it was in the early days, for sure. But it taught a huge amount of resilience. And unfortunately for me, my 3-month period was basically September, October, November. So it wasn't the best weather for it either, to be fair. It was all good. There were times when I just sat in the car and didn't want to get out for a couple of hours, and you do have that mental battle in your own head, though. So it does teach you, it teaches you that you just have to get on with it, because you can't just sit in the car all day when it's raining. And I think that's a good metaphor for life generally.
Would you? So and then would it be a case of just getting a few basic details? Then was it? Did you get emails at that point? Or
not so much emails. It was mainly just, look, if you're okay with it, what I'd like to do is just take a note of your name and your phone number, and if anything crops up that I think might be of interest to you, I'll give you a call and let you know. Yeah. Would that be okay? And that was it. And then that's what we used to do. If we had an interest in stock, or we had an interest in bond opportunity, or we had something we were looking at, I would give them a call and I'd say, look, just to let you know, we've got this that we're looking at the moment. We think it's a really interesting investment opportunity. Would you like to sit down and have a chat?
And then just out of interest, then when you had about 300 contacts.
By the end of that,
what were the numbers like in terms of how likely you were to do business with that person? With out of the 300, how many people would you say you tended?
You'd always find you'd get roughly 5% of people that are ready to do something then and there.
Yeah.
Like genuinely on the doorstep would be like, well, actually, I've been looking at this.
Yeah.
And you would actually be able to sit down and have a meeting with them the day after and get straight into it. But that was probably one in 20.
1 in 20.
Yeah. there's going to be 30-40% that just basically have said yes to get you off the doorstep and will never ever do anything with you and never answer the phone to you ever again. And that's absolutely fine. That's no problem at all. And then, because we went back to them, and I used to try to speak to all of those prospects at least once a quarter, and still do with my prospects even now, actually. I try to speak to them at least once a quarter just to keep in touch with them. By the end of that first 12 months, I reckon you've probably done business with about 20% of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that across the board as well?
Pretty
like
much.
for every single
we saw that. I mean, there was 15 of us came through in our kind of cohort, if you like, based all in different areas of the UK, and everyone's. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people didn't last through the door knocking stage. A couple of them had given up before that piece. Yeah. Pretty much everybody that had stuck it out for a year or so had almost identical conversion rates and even revenue rates. So there's some slight difference. Some people got a bit more lucky than others because you find a £1 million client instead of a 200 grand client, and that obviously has a huge impact. But fundamentally, the conversion rates were pretty strict across, and we know that because the way the bonuses, there's like a 3-month bonus, 6-month bonus, 12-month bonus based on number of clients and revenues, and we all hit it at pretty much the same time point.
You must have been of exactly the same ilk then, of same energy.
They definitely hired entrepreneurial salespeople.
Yeah.
People that are good at talking to people, because you've got to be. If you are going into an environment where you've got to go and knock doors for 3 months, and then basically keep calling those people and keep persevering with those people for 12 months afterwards, you've got to have a certain sort of mindset and have a certain kind of personality. You've got to be. You have to be willing for people to say no. Yeah, for sure, because you get a lot of that.
Yeah.
And often, particularly when you're at the doorstep, you can't take too much offence when someone basically, there were some words used that perhaps weren't the most pleasant at times in a lot of door slamming places.
I was going to ask, what was the kind of worst experience that you had there?
I once had somebody who didn't even answer the door, just opened the side gate to let the dogs out into the front yard to chase me off. Literally, so they peeked around the curtains. So I knocked on the door. They peeked around the curtains, looked at me. When I heard the side door opening, so I was like, because sometimes people they don't open the front door. So I was like, oh, they're just opening the side door. So when peeked my head around, he just unlocked the side door gate, and these two massive dogs ran out. So I exit out of the main gate very, very quickly, and that was probably, I guess, the worst, rudest, and but also quite an entertaining story. So
yeah. No, I think it was worth it. I think it was worth it purely for that.
Yeah, but that was. To be fair, the thing is, I think the perception or the fear is always worse than the reality, and I think that goes right across the financial services career generally. I think you're always the expectation or the fear is always a lot worse than actually. Most people are quite polite. Most polite. Oh, hey, no, I'm sorry, it's just not for me. Most people are actually fairly nice about it.
It's funny as well, isn't it? Because I'm in recruitment, so you have to be. You're sort of part of the same ilk.
Yeah, exactly right.
In some ways, and the thing is that when somebody comes to me and tries to sell something, most of the time, I want to say yes to that person and I'm willing them on, but I do sort of have an element where I'm a little bit critical sometimes, and I think you could...
Yeah, but that's because you're in a sales type environment.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, I mean, I'm no longer allowed to talk to salespeople when we're out shopping if I'm with my wife, because I will probably try and buy it if they've done a good sales job, whether I want it or not. So she just kind of steps in immediately and goes, no, we don't want it now. So I'm like, yeah, fine, okay, I won't buy that. Yeah. But I think, it comes down to the fact that fear of what might be, it's almost always worse in your mind than it is in reality.
I mean, all they're going to say is no.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? Obviously, we, at Fintuity, and we're probably going to come on to this later, but at Fintuity, we recruit and provide a home for self-employed advisors and AR businesses. And when I bring people through, I will show them what I have done to build client banks in multiple countries from scratch, landing with your suitcase on day one and then How do you build a client bank? How do you go and do that? And I show them some of the things I do, and you can see on their faces like a look of horror. And it's like, but what's the worst that can happen? You've got X number of clients in your client bank now. So you've got, whatever, 30 clients that you're bringing with you, or 100 clients that you bring with you, or 0 clients if you're just entering the industry. If you go and say to somebody, hi, my name's Andrew, I'm a financial advisor, is there anything I can help you with right now? What's the worst that's going to happen? They say no, and you've still got 0 clients. Or they go, actually, do you know, it's just not the right time now, but give me a call back in 6 months. Or actually, do you know what? I've been thinking about this, and I do actually need some help with this right now. So the worst situation is that you're still exactly where you were now, but at least you've made some positive steps to try and move yourself forward.
Do you think the industry has got a bit, the profession, sorry, do you think that the profession has got a bit soft in this respect?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to do. I think when the average age of a financial advisor is late 50s now, 57, 58, whatever that is, I think it's very easy to be soft when you've got 40 million of assets in your client bank and, you know, 300 grand of ongoing, and you don't really need the new business.
And I guess that a lot of firms are trying to pass down the clients as well a lot of the time, which is great, and they should do it. But
yeah, I also just think the way that we bring on board new advisors into this industry, the big difference for me is like the new guys that I see coming in now, their technical knowledge is exceptionally good. You know, the RO exams nowadays are such a great foundation compared to, like, I mean, I did the old CF exams back in the day and like the old FPCs before that, but, you know, it was the amount of technical knowledge that you have as an advisor before you can go out and see a client now is far beyond what people going into the industry even 10, 15 years ago were. And that's great, and you need the technical knowledge. I think the bit that we're missing now is if you look at those guys that are in their 50s, and me, I mean, I've been, like, as you thankfully pointed out right at the start, you know, I am in my 24th year in the industry. I'm not going to take the 25. I am in my 24th year. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks. Not sure you're making that much better, but
sorry.
You know, so people of that generation, you know, anyone that came into this industry like pre 2008, really, you know, so anyone pre that, we were kind of taught the soft selling skills and the sales skills as much as, if not more, than we were taught the technical side. And I think the problem is we forget to spend as much time on that with advisors now. And the problem is, if you can't get to the fundamental emotional drivers behind why somebody needs to do something, and you just go out there just to sell on technical knowledge and logic, you'll still get clients, but you won't get the same level of buy-in. And the problem is, if you do not get that same level of buy-in, you can have the best solution and the best piece of advice for that client ever. You can be the best technical advisor in the world, and the solution you have for that client is the optimal solution to get them where they need to be. But if they haven't bought into you, they haven't bought into the business that you represent, you haven't done a good enough job of justifying that you understand them and are looking to help them, they don't proceed with you. You ultimately have let that client down. Because it means they're going to go to a different advisor who might not have the same level of morals or ethics or optimal structuring around that solution. And I think this is a really big issue for our industry, particularly given that, you know, we do need fresh blood into our industry right now. It's something that needs to be solved. And you know, we were talking about this morning, in fact, and this route that we're putting new advisors through now, which is do a couple of years as administrator, you know, a couple of years as a power planner, and then maybe we'll let you out start seeing some clients. While fine from a technical perspective and a compliance perspective, because they're very, very strong there, in my opinion, the skill set that makes a good advisor is not the same skill set that makes a good administrator and a good paraplanner. And I think if you force most advisors, you'll know this from the recruitment side, most advisors do this job because they like speaking to people and they like helping people. That's the bit of the job that most advisors enjoy. There's not many of us that really enjoy the admin paraplanning bit,
No.
if we're really honest. It's more of a bit that it's important and we have to have that bit, but it's not the reason that most of us are in the industry. You get the occasional one who loves it, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And the problem is the personality type that is good at that bit, that's outgoing, that is good at building rapport and building relationships, will probably get bored and leave the industry before they get a chance to be an advisor with the way that we tend to be doing it right now. Or we get the wrong skill set eventually entering the advice piece. I'm not sure it's an easy problem to solve, though.
No, I think, there's as we were saying before, I think that, when you started out, you were 20 years old. And I think the thing is that there's a massive ageism side of things, in my opinion. I think that there are some people that are just not going to, they might have been put onto this path to become a financial planner, but it's not really where they want to, where they really, in their heart of hearts, where they want to be.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I think that people should just be thrust into it and put onto the trainee side of things straight away as soon as they've got those exams, straight away.
Yep.
And then you can see whether they're going to ultimately do it or not. And but I will say one thing though. I think sometimes you get people that aren't as naturally kind of inclined that way. They may be introverted as opposed to extroverted, but they can learn it. And because they want to, they're able to do it. They've got the right attitude. And I think that's something, again, it's probably down to recruitment. I'd say it's probably very similar in that I would say that I'm probably fairly introverted naturally. Although I think I've become more extroverted as I kind of get a bit older.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, though, is that I've had to learn the job.
Yeah.
And I think because I've wanted to do that, I've got better over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same for the financial planning industry on the whole.
Yeah, I agree completely. If I look at, I was 24, 25 years old building a stockbroking business in York on a self-employed basis, commission only, and that is that you've got to have a certain mindset to go down that road.
Yeah.
Be a bit of a glutton for punishment. But I do, we're just missing, we're missing a trick in the way that we're bringing the next generation through. And I think we're losing some great people who would make great advisors because they don't get the opportunity to just get out and start talking to people and doing the advice piece of work sooner. Don't get me wrong. I was a week of training, then I was on the phone talking to,
which is probably the other end of the spectrum.
Don't get me wrong, but it was year 2000, so it's it was a very different time back then. There's been a heck of a lot of regulatory changes since then, as we all know. But it's you cut your teeth very, very quickly, and I think for me, the route for new advisors really ought to be, look, you've got 6 months to go and get all your exams done, because if that's all you're focused on, great. And, maybe for 6 months you're getting them to do admin paraplanning just so they're in and around it.
Yeah.
But 6 months, get your exams done. After that, here is a lower value client bank of, 50 households with, less than 150 grand or whatever it is. You don't want to go and give them the £1 million client straight away because they probably don't have the skill set to deal with it efficiently. But here's 50 households with less than 150 grand. Go out and cut your teeth. Do the job in the real world.
And then a yellow pages as well.
Yeah, again, I can't really do that stuff anymore. That's a bit more of an issue. Yeah, cold calling is definitely dead.
You were saying there that people were when you said what you had to do when you went into another
Yeah.
country, so you just come off the plane
Yeah.
and people were sort of like, "Oh, this sounds like a lot of work."
Yeah.
This what was it that you had to do there to really get the business off the ground? Because it must be really tough in another country.
Yeah, like I said, I've done it 4 times. So, like I said, I think glutton for punishment. The sad thing is, I actually quite enjoy that bit. I genuinely quite enjoy that starting from zero and building something from the ground up. It is quite fun. You know, I mean, I have genuinely landed in a new country where I know absolutely nobody, with my 2 suitcases dragging behind me, and gone, right, I've got no clients, I've got no income coming through, I'm on a self-employed basis as well. How do I make this work? Now, there's lots and lots of ways and means to go and do that. Fundamentally, it comes down to one really, really simple thing, and that is getting in front of as many people as you possibly can and saying, "Hi, my name is Andrew, I'm a financial advisor, is there anything I can help you with at the moment?" It's maybe not as obvious as that, don't get me wrong, you're not just walking up to random people in the street and saying that, because everyone will think you're a bit of a weirdo, but that is fundamentally what you have to do, and the more times that you do that, the more people you say that to, the quicker you will build your business and the more business you will do.
And I guess the thing is as well is that you'll get better at that
You get
as well.
much better at it. You get your elevator pitch, you know, to use the correct word for it. But to a certain extent, sometimes in the offshore space, it was easier because you know where the expats hang out. You know, there's expat cricket clubs and expat football clubs, and you know, there's chambers of commerce, and you know, so you know, when the offshore side was very much focused on non-local business. So it was not just British expats, but you know, American expats, or you know, whatever it might be, German expats, French expats. But it was very much expat work. So it was probably easier to know where those people were. But my first boss when I was in Hong Kong, my first boss in the offshore space, told me something which has stuck with me for a long time, and I think it's a really good piece of advice, and that is, find out where the money is and then go there often. Now, it doesn't mean just go where all the rich people hang out. What it means is, after you've been in this industry for a little while, you work out where your niche is. You work out which people buy into you, which kind of people buy into your personality type, the type of people that you do well with. And then what you do is you start to go into those networks and into those groups more often. You hang out with those people. You give those people more attention, so you get more referrals from the same type of people. So even from a servicing perspective, you put more energy into those people in those sectors where you know those people buy off you. You know, if you do very well with bankers off, you know, in that industry, or if you do very well with tech people, or if you do very well with, I don't know, with kind of more manual type, you know, oil and gas type thing, you know, you will work out the kind of people that buy from you. And once you know who that is, that's where you zone in, and that's when you start now. But you probably don't know that until a couple of years into your business. You know, maybe you do really well with people that are at retirement and looking at drawdown versus annuity or whatever. That you do really well with those people. Maybe you do really well with 40 to 50-year-olds for the more holistic planning base, you know, 40 to 50-year-old professionals who want holistic planning. Maybe you do better with, you know, end of age, you know, long-term care and inheritance tax work. Maybe that's your niche, and you just, you know, you get on really well with that demographic. But you work it out, so you find out where the money is, or where that is for you, where you have your niche, and you start to build there more often. That's all you have to do. I say that's all you have to do. It's easier said than done in reality. And it takes time. But yeah, that's the way that you do it.
Did you find your niche there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, where I've always done very well is kind of that 40 to 60-year-old professionals. So really, mainly kind of banking, legal accountancy. I tend to do very well in that kind of sector. So kind of they tend to be quite a bit more detail focused. they tend to be quite well educated in terms of their knowledge of financial planning generally. They normally have quite a lot of knowledge. So I quite like the mental challenge when they come up with difficult questions. Obviously in the offshore space, my niche was slightly different. So my niche with offshore was actually expatriation, repatriation. So close to moving out or moving back.
Right, okay, gotcha.
And towards the end, a lot of my work was really very much focused on people moving back to the UK. So, and just, prepping, because there's a lot of work you've got to do, but both sides. And there's a lot of, the reason I liked that was it's quite enjoyable because there's a lot of work you could do. Things like timing of the actual move for tax years and things like that as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of like funky planning you could do, which I found quite interesting as well.
So was this this kind of cure ops quite a lot of the time? Was it?
It was back in the day. Back? We made a decision very early on at Chase to stop using cure ops and move back towards SIPs, just because we ran with a very different disruptive business model, and that's something I've always quite liked doing. I always tend to like doing something which is maybe not seen as the norm in industry, which is hence Fintuity now, which we'll come on to a little bit later, no doubt. But I've always liked to try and find, not rip the rule book up, but certainly find different ways of approaching a problem.
And then, so it kind of nicely leads into Chase then.
Sure.
Chase there for 7 years in Cyprus.
Yep.
Initially as a financial planner, and then you became an executive director.
So I joined as an IFA originally, country manager within 9-10 months, executive director within about 18 months.
And the business grew a lot, didn't it?
Massively, yeah. So we took that from probably 4 or 5 advisors and like a couple of offices, and we took that to, by the time I left, we had close to 35 advisors, offices in 7 countries globally. Got up to about just under $1 billion of AUM from about 180 million when we first took it. So yeah, it was a real growth business, and we drove that hard.
Was it same thing same model for what had happened when you'd been so to give you a bit of shoreline beacon, same kind of model, come off the flight.
Same thing, yeah. I got to Cyprus, I knew nobody. Never even been to Cyprus, to be fair. Although to be fair, I'd never been to Moscow. I'd never been to Hong Kong either. So. Yeah. Like 2 hours of Google research. Yeah, looks kind of nice. I'll give that a go. That was literally about the extent of it. But I met the main founding director of Chase, and he was someone who also was super driven guy, like really successful. And like I say, I really liked him. Came on board. Started from zero, built a client bank again. Same thing I was always doing, which was, essentially go out to as many people as possible, and what I've always done. And it harks right back to the Edward Jones days. Get out there, introduce yourself to as many people as possible, and then start working the prospect database. It's that simple. Difficult, but that simple. We built a great business there, and ultimately it was all organic. There was the big thing that we did is at that time, the offshore space was very much very high hidden commissions, like lots of bond sales, and then within the bond, advisors were putting things like structured products and commission paying, like funds, and there was some really poor stuff. I'd never really got on board with that. Because I'd come from a UK financial planning background. When I got to Hong Kong, and on day one, no offence to the guys, they were great salespeople and really good guys, but they were ex-caravan sales and ex-double glazing sales, and it was I thought I was a pretty good salesperson. When I landed in the offshore space, I realised that I was not even close. It was incredible. But at Chase, what I really wanted to do was find a business that was more aligned with my moral values, which is a big reason for joining them. And we ripped the model up in, when would that have been? That would have been 2015, basically. We ripped the commission model up and we moved to a fee-based model.
which is very different.
Which is hugely different in the offshore
yeah.
space because nobody else was doing it. And we were one of the first. There's quite a few businesses doing it now. Some very good businesses out there that in the offshore space that have moved to a fee-based model. I would argue more because they had to rather than because they wanted to. But that's a different conversation for another day. But we went transparent pricing. We went UK model, initial charge, ongoing fee. And that was how we built our revenues. And it became very, very easy for us because if we were up against any other business to win that client, I had a very simple presentation, which is a basic spreadsheet, which showed, look, these are the hidden commissions. This is how much you're actually paying. This is the reduction in yield over the next 10 years. And in some cases, we're talking about like fee basis versus commission basis was 40, 50 grand difference over a 10-year period. Really? And I'm talking on like a 250 grand investment here. Like
So I mean, you're ahead already, aren't you, basically?
Yeah, it was just a no-brainer. It was like, we were just miles ahead. And the other thing that we introduced was that, no one was building proper portfolios. They were putting like a structured note and maybe like just randomly picking like 4 or 5 funds off a list somewhere. There was no real thing. So what we did was we started building our own model portfolios as well. So we were building clean ETF-based model portfolios, which again, in the industry was just unheard of in the offshore space at that time. And because again, the offshore space is 10 years behind the UK minimum, although catching up a little bit now. And we were doing these model portfolios, ETFs, like proper portfolios, risk adjusted, rebalanced quarterly, and all this other good stuff. And like I say, we basically built a version of the onshore of the UK model for the offshore space, and we grew organically. There was a lot of, we were fairly strict in terms of the type of people we wanted to bring on because they had to have the right moral compass, I guess. They had to believe in what we were doing. That was a really important thing. They had to believe in what we were trying to do, and it was very, very successful. So it's fun.
What So you've done a lot of recruitment. At Chase was probably the time when you started to do
for a couple of businesses before that as well. But definitely bulk of it was once we hit Chase. Yeah, last 8-9 years has been quite a lot of it.
What were you looking for in terms of the, or if I ask it a different way, what would be what makes a good financial planner for you? What are you looking for?
It's a really good question, actually. I think number one, the most important thing for me with a financial planner is the ability to recognize conversational ease very, very quickly. So great at building rapport. Within that first 3 or 4 minutes, you can just you can see that this person is a people person. And almost that's more important to me than technical skill to a certain level. And the reason I normally know within the first 2 or 3 minutes whether I want to take someone through in a process or not, which sounds ridiculous, but actually there's still time for them to change my mind. Don't get me wrong, if they do mess up the first 2 or 3 minutes, but I know very quickly because it's so important. That first minute or two, particularly we employ, we recruit, and even at Chase, we were recruiting self-employed advisors. So we're not recruiting someone to be employed and come and farm a client bank. That's not the model that we run at Fintuity. It's not the model we were running at Chase. It was very much hunters rather than farmers. So we are looking for a slightly different personality type, number one. But you only get a couple of minutes to make an impression on somebody. If that's a new client, if that's a lead that they are dealing with, which we have given them, they get a couple of minutes to really make an impression. And a client will make a decision on you within that first period. So it's vital that they can build that bit of rapport. After that, I'm looking for a reasonable array of experience. I like when people have done some different bits, certainly in terms of different types of work. I do like quite a mixed a mixed basis. If all someone has done is just, they've been very like pension transfer focused for the last 10 years, that's fine, it's great. But I generally have it's not to say we wouldn't hire them, but I generally have a preference for someone who has a more rounded base, where they've maybe done a bit of investment, a bit of, they've maybe done a bit of mortgage protection in the past, but they don't really do it anymore. Maybe they've done, a bit of, I like someone who's done interesting things. I also like where there's there's 3 questions that I ask every single person on first interview, if you like. Although, if you've ever fed back to any of the clients that you've put in front of us, you'll know it's not really an interview.
No, it's very much just
it's more of a conversation. Yeah, absolutely. But there's 3 things I'm always interested in. I get the CV through. That's fine. We all put all the good stuff on our CV anyway, so that's fine.
Well,
but it gives me.
From what I don't place any emphasis on it whatsoever.
Absolutely, and neither do I really. But it's good to understand, have they got the basic requisites of what you need, So for me, there's 3 things I always want to understand. Number 1, weirdly, I ask them exactly the same first question that you asked them, which is, how did you decide to move into financial advice? And just tell me in your own words about your journey. I don't need blow by blow. I don't need job by job. Tell me about your journey. Number 2, why are you looking to leave? That's always important, just to understand the mentality behind that. And the third one, and most importantly of all, you're obviously looking around at the moment. What is most important to you in terms of that next step? What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? Because for me, the most important thing when going through that interview process is 2 things. Transparency on their side, in terms of what they want and what their expectations are. Transparency on my side in terms of what I can deliver. And I think one of the biggest problems we still have in our industry is companies over-promising and under-delivering to candidates during the recruitment process. And it still happens time and again, and it annoys the hell out of me.
So, why Fintuity, first of all?
Yeah, so I mean, it was interesting for me. So I think the big driver of this was that, I'd been offshore for 14 years. I was an IFA when I left. I came back, joined a really good firm, chartered firm, Times Top 100, all this other wonderful stuff. So it's a really good quality firm. And the industry hadn't changed in 14 years. Everything was still being done the same way it was being done 14 years ago. Like, bar, they maybe sent an extra document or 2 via DocuSign, or, but nothing had really moved at all. And the attitudes to, I joined, I was self-employed, I was actually employed in that role, to be fair, but I got back and they're like, oh, why don't you go and do BNI? It's like, oh yeah, I'll go and do BNI with the other 19 financial advisors that are there.
Yeah.
That'll be a great way to find leads that no one else is talking to. Do you know what I mean? Like, go and get some accountancy and lawyer introducers. Well, yeah, great. It's fine. But everybody else is doing that, And again, it comes back to what I was talking about earlier. It works, but everybody else is doing the same thing. So the competition for that is wild. And the other big frustration was that I think post-RDR, post-consumer duty, we've had all these regulatory changes which fundamentally in our industry have driven us to a place where businesses are increasing their minimum advice, minimum levels for advice higher and higher, increasing their minimum fees. There's lots and lots of businesses out there where the minimum fee is like £1,500 for any advice. Lots of places where, the minimum AUM that a client needs to be bringing across, minimum assets they need to have is like £250,000, £500,000 in some cases, which is nuts. Because the argument I always make here is, I'm not being funny, right? If someone's got 800 grand in their pension, whether they get advice from a financial advisor or not, they're probably going to be okay. Genuinely, it might not be optimal in terms of what they're doing, and yes, we can optimize that and we can make it better, and we can provide a lot of ancillary stuff around that, like cash flow forecast and income plan and all that other good stuff that happens around that. So yes, we can optimize, but on a fundamental level, if they never spoke to an IFA, they're probably good. Someone who's 55 years old and has 80 grand in their pension arguably needs the help way, way more and need the optimization way, way more than the opposite end. And unfortunately, IDR Consumer Duty, things like that, have driven that market away from advice because it's too expensive and they can't access it. So the principle, the thing I love about Fintuity is that we have three key principles. So for those that don't know Fintuity, I'll just do a very quick bit of background, but essentially we are a fintech business. So we have a proprietary piece of tech that has been built, and there's like $3.5 million gone into this tech, so it's not like some bloke in his bedroom that's put something together. It's it's a proper piece of kit. And what it aims to do is it really works from the point that a prospect or a person becomes known to you, so right from the very first lead generation stage, through to the point that that policy gets issued, and obviously works thereafter, but that's the way it's strongest. And there's three things that we aim to do here. Number one is achieve optimal client outcomes. That's what drives every single decision we make. It drives our hiring decisions, it drives the tech, drives our compliance decisions, and full compliance functionality within the platform as well. The second one, which is the key thing, is we want to be able to help clients irrelevant of where they are in their financial planning journey. So we have three bits of the business. We've got a coaching and wellbeing piece of the business, which is guidance rather than advice. So it's financial coaching. That is, I need help getting out of debt. How do I go about saving for my first property? My budgeting's out of whack. How do I go about putting together, my financial plan? Opposite end of that is our IFA business. So majority of that for our leads is digital delivery. So it's all delivered at a time and place that's convenient for the client via Zoom. They can literally book a meeting with one of our advisors at any point they want to. It automatically links up with our clients' diaries, and they can. One of my clients can just go onto their client portal, book a meeting with me to have a conversation about something at any time they want. So the power is in the client's hands. Within reason, I set my working hours, so they can't put a meeting at 2:00 in the morning,
Gotcha.
thankfully. But they do have that facility that, assuming it's within my working hours and there's nothing else in my diary, that they can put that meeting in. So we have the full IFA piece of the business, and that is what you would expect: investment, pension, mortgage, protection, tax planning, inheritance tax, yada yada, the same stuff we always do. Now, the key bit in the middle is there's a piece of the tech which is our virtual advisor software, our virtual advisor piece. Now, that will do restricted advice on SIP, ISA, GIA, and protection. So where we're very unique is that, we have something called our free financial health check tool at the top. Now, that is for you and I that are in the industry. When we looked at that, we were like, well, it's a simplified fact find, because it is. But what that does is it goes into our AI large language model that we have behind, and that will then look at all the information the client's provided and give the client some guidance. So it might be you need to put £800 a month more into your pension, or you don't have enough protection, or whatever it might be, all sorts of different things.
I had a look on the website, actually. It was really good the way that it was done. So it was, I think you had a few bits, which was emergency crash, investments, liabilities, and protection, and then it would sort of tell you exactly what needed to be done.
Yeah, and that will differ depending on what you've put in as well. So depending on what you've entered through the flow and things like your age profile and stuff, it will also pull different bits of advice out for you.
So if you're sort of like me, young family, 35,
you're going to get a lot more protection type
exactly,
bits.
yeah. So then,
sure.
Okay, and then and then whereas probably going to be more pensions focused if you don't have that much and you're 50.
Correct.
So
it is an advice piece. So it will literally go into the AI. The AI will look at it, and it's been trained on like 20,000 prior report pieces, basically. So looks at the fact find, looks at the report, and then pulls it all out. But it will differ from every client. Will get a slightly different output off the back of that, and that will then, like I say, drive those leads. But the virtual advisor, like I say, will do hands-off advice, but we call it hybrid advice, because throughout that whole thing, the difference between that and something like a nutmeg is that if the client wants to speak to an advisor, they can do. And actually, most clients do. About 60% of clients that go through the virtual advice flow will end up having a conversation with the advisor. Now, normally that is 5 minutes to go, just before I press the button to put this £200 a month into my ISA, I just want to make sure I'm not doing something totally silly.
Is this all linked in? So just for an example then, so the ISA side of things, I don't know here. Let's say that somebody has it with Hargreaves Lansdown or AJ Bell. Does that mean that your app can link into that?
Depends on the provider is the answer.
Okay.
So where they have the... I'm an IFA here, so apologies if some of the technical terminology is not correct. So any tech people watching, I apologise in advance for my misuse of acronyms. But as I understand it, as long as there is push-pull API on both sides, which means we can send data to them and they can send data to us, or we can pull it from them.
Right.
But it has to be open on both sides.
Okay.
So that's sometimes the issue that we have is that a lot of platforms will only have push or pull. So either we can receive the data or we can send the data. A lot of them won't do both. So where a provider has both, we have built the integrations to be able to do fully, basically everything can talk to each other. But it is on the third-party side. So one of our tech teams is dedicated to ongoing platform development. So if a provider comes to market, or if they change their the way that their API and digital platform works, where we can start accessing that, we'll build the functionality for it. But there is limitations on the third-party side in terms of how much integration is possible there. So, tech team, if you listen, I hope I did that right.
I mean, it must be. I'm just thinking about this now, though. It just opens up so many opportunities, and the thing is, as well, is that I suspect that I'm going to guess here that because everything is done on the tech, I don't know because. Don't know. I'm probably not.
I probably don't know either.
No, I don't either. But I'm assuming that you get a good deal bit point wise as well because of this, because it's massively simplified. Because
for example, we use, we use companies like P1 platform AJ Bell quite a lot because we have 0.15 bips on P1. We have 0.2 with AJ Bell. We also have full integration. So for us to be able to open like a P1 ISA on our platform is a single button press. And that does absolutely everything. Opens the account, signs all the documentation.
So if someone doesn't have an
KYC.
ISA, they can just open it up straight away and do that?
Yeah.
Then, just out of interest, do you have the capability to do LISAs for someone a bit younger?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
So at the moment, it's standard stocks and shares ISAs, SIP, GAA, and protection, term assurance, and decreasing level
This
term
will
assurance.
be, I'm assuming.
It's all, yeah. If I look at the dev pipeline over the next 12 to 24 months, there's all sorts of stuff planned.
Yeah.
The really cool thing we're doing at the moment is, at the moment we've got this financial health check 2.0. We've got 3.0 in the works. I was testing the beta a couple of weeks ago, so it's supposed to be out end of Q3. What I have learnt working for a fintech is whenever they say it's coming, it's normally a few weeks after that.
Yeah.
So let's call it Q4. But that will basically has a fully integrated cash flow within it. So it will basically allow prospects, not even clients, but allow prospects to go to that, put their fact-find information in, get those recommendations, but then also be able to see how that fits into things like future income, future plans, cash flow, expenditure, all that other cool stuff. And that'll be really cool. That'll be really good when that comes out. It's like I said, if I was playing with the beta, it's a fascinating piece of equipment. But there's all sorts of like automated ongoing suitability is another thing that we're trying to solve.
I was going to ask around that because you would say when we first spoke, you said. Because you're still practicing IFA now. You do your bit
I still
of
see
business.
clients face to face. Yeah, I still see clients now. Yeah.
So you said that the admin side of things, which was the bit that really impressed me, admin side from your perspective, I think you said between 10 to 12 minutes you were doing the admin, and then 80% of the report was generated. Have I got that right?
So the way it works is that, and this is the third piece. First one's optimal client outcome. Second is obviously being able to help a client at any stage and irrelevant of net worth, because obviously the virtual advisor, even if a client only wants to do 50 quid a month into an ISA or like a 20 grand pension consolidation, the virtual advisor can handle that. So we can deal with clients irrelevant of size. But the third bit is from an advisor's point of view, the tech and then the bits that we've put around the tech are there to allow advisors as much time as possible to speak to people. we want optimal client outcomes, but also we've got to recognise that this is a commercial piece. We do this because ultimately we want to be able to put food in the fridge and petrol in the car, and change the light bulbs when we need a new light bulb. There is a commercial element to do this. Otherwise, none of us would be doing it. And how do you build revenue in this industry? You speak to people. That's it. Yes, administrators are important. Yes, paraplanners are important. Yes, compliance is important. But in terms of the pure business itself, there's no revenue generation there. It's needed, but there's no revenue generation. So what we've done on the tech side is we've tried to automate as much of those processes as possible. So for example, LOAs, really good example here. We have automated LOA chasing. So automated LOA creation, automated chasing. So simple things like for example, ringing a provider to complete like the data harvest sheet to do a recommendation for a pension. You've got to speak to the provider, go through the list of questions. Is there any protected tax-free cash and all the other stuff that we need to know before we can provide that recommendation. And most administrative parts of a business in the UK, they'll have someone sat there on hold for an hour trying to get through to someone to then ask all the questions, and you might get to speak to 6 or 7 providers during the whole working day. So that's 8 hours of staffing costs to go and get that data done. For us, like the way that the tech works is the platform knows who we need to speak to and what questions we need to ask each morning. So it rings all the providers concurrently.
Really?
And then as soon as the provider picks up, it patches it through to the administrator with a list of questions on the screen. So like we can get through 8-9 chases with the company within still probably a couple of hours, to be fair, just because you're waiting on hold all the time. But it's stuff like that. Automated chasing. So as soon as an LOA goes into a provider, the system knows where we can use a digital LOA and where it has to be a physical LOA, and will create the workflows accordingly. So it's just optimizing those back office workflows to try and speed that up.
Clever.
On the paraplanning side, because of the way the advice flows work on the back office, essentially all of the bits and pieces and the comments that you add during it are all automatically collected. So when it gets to the paraplanner's desk, it's already like the report is like 70-80% written. It depends on the complexity, some are a lot more complete than others, but most of the work we do, 80% of it is ISA, pensions, similar sort of stuff. So again, it just saves the paraplanner a huge amount of time because again, it's a single platform. So it's CRM, task management, client management, compliance management, integrated calendars, integrated with DocuSign, integrated with Zoom, like everything is on a single hub. The only third-party piece of software we kind of use for that onboarding flow is cash flow on the advice side. And even then, once our own cash flow modeling is built towards the end of the year, we won't use that anymore. But the whole purpose of this is you don't have to enter the same piece of data into 10 different places, which is the way the industry works at the moment. And there's lots of software out there, and some great software out there, some really cool software out there now. But again, the problem is you've still got 10 different logins, 10 different things that you're trying to do. And like I say, for me, the admin is wonderful because, for want of a better analogy, I just basically quarterback the onboarding process.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, if you're not an NFL fan, I'm sorry. But basically my job is to make sure that the right people have the right tasks at the right time. So, normally when I first meet with a client, I have the fact find pre-completed. So that first meeting becomes about emotional drivers. Where are you now? Where are you trying to get to? How can I actually help you get there? Rather than, what's your date of birth? How much have you got in this pension? How much have you got in that pension? Yada, 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 yada. Important information, but stuff that detracts from the core reason why we're actually sat in front of that client. Off the back of that, I will, it depends on the workflow to be honest, but let's say, I will create a task for admin to go and get the client agreement and the LOAs out to the client. Off the back of that all comes back in. I'll then quarterback that, manage that through. The administrators will take care of most of that until the actual data comes back in. That'll then drop back to my desk. It'll say, all data received for all plans, it's in your inbox. Say in your inbox, it's on platform, but same thing. I'm going to get told off by the tech team now, but it's fine. This is my technical knowledge. It's great. I'm an IFA. I then basically check through it, just make sure there's nothing weird right away from what I've said. I'll then assign that out to research to go and pull together, build a portfolio for the client, build the recommendation in terms of product. Okay, that comes back for me to just check I'm okay with what they've built. Sometimes, and you can have a handle on that. We are independent. There might be a reason specifically why I want to use, for sake of a Aviva platform or whatever. So if I want to go down a specific route, I can just add a quick note to that effect. That'll come back in. Quick check. Yep, fine. Assign it out to paraplanning to go write the report. Our turnaround time for paraplanning is 5 working days, because of the speed at which the tech is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us.
I'm assuming as well that you're going to need some admin and power plans, but you will need nowhere near as many as you otherwise would do.
Right now, we run 10 advisors with approximately sort of 1.5 administrators, I would say, and 1 power planner. And this is the difference. This is why when we are doing our digital, so our digital leads and our digital face-to-face IFA business, we only run at 0.5% ongoing. Now, don't get me wrong, if you want to do face-to-face business, you can run up to 1% ongoing in the business. So that's fine. But if you want to do more than 0.5% ongoing, it has to be some element of face-to-face in there. That's the decision that we've made. So we normally do 0.5% ongoing, because where's the cost of an IFA business? It's the administrators, it's the power planners.
So you pass on the saving to the customer, basically.
Yeah.
What tends to be the average total expense ratio on the whole?
So if we talk about, let's say P1 or AJ Bell, which probably, a lot of our, we are independent, but a lot of our pension investment business will go to them. Probably like 50-60% of it will go to one of those two. P1 0.15, AJ Bell 0.2. So let's say worst case platform costs 0.2. 0.5% ongoing on the advisor side. We run our own MPS portfolios. So if you're into one of the passive portfolios, you're looking at somewhere between, depends on risk to be fair, but somewhere between 0.3 to 0.45.
So we're looking at around about 1.25.
Just over 1.
Yeah.
It's very rare it's over 1.2.
I mean, you'd be...
So we undercut everybody.
I had a conversation with somebody the other week, and they were telling me that it will shock you, it was 2.75.
Doesn't surprise me at all. There's plenty in the industry where it is at over 2.5.
Well, I'd probably say that on average, speaking to most people, because I tend to ask the question, tends to be the late
1.8ish.
1.8.
Yeah, if you're a decent advisor and you're not running around ripping people off, if that's fair to say.
Yeah.
I would argue if you're charging 2.8, 2.7, 2.8 TR all in, I think that's a little on the high side given the market nowadays. But I think the other thing a lot of more traditional businesses haven't quite got to grips with is the speed at which digitisation is going to happen in this industry over the next 4 to 5 years. And I don't think they have quite got a handle on that 3 and 1 model. Probably isn't going to fly for... I'll be very surprised if that's still around in 5 to 10 years' time.
It's a very... God, we could have a whole conversation around that, couldn't we? I mean,
we could. I think eventually it'll even go fixed fee. Honestly, I think it'll move to more like a menu style fixed fee type service. And this is what I love about Fintuity is already we have things like a subscription basis available, like that's for the coaching side. But we are looking now, and we've been having some conversations internally about things like fixed fee options, subscription based options for clients, where we've started to see a few advisory firms go down that route. It's a really, really interesting model. One of a large firm in London, I won't mention them, but their minimum is £500,000, but their fixed fee model is basically it's like £1,250 a month fixed fee, which is a lot. But I mean, they are dealing with it's 14-15 grand a year, but it's they are dealing with very, very high net worth individuals, and it's about doing more than just I'm just going to take 1% on your pension and see you once a year. I think people want to need more, particularly those that are under 55, 60. I think they are surprisingly open to the digital model. They expect a bit more in terms of service now.
Yeah, and I'd say, I mean, you look at Generation Z I think it is. I mean, is it Generation Z?
Are they the one? I don't know.
Is that-
I'm a millennial. I just scrape into millennial. I'm like the first year millennial, elder millennial. I think.
I'm millennial. I'm a millennial, pretty much smack bang in the middle. Millennial.
Yeah, I'm elder millennial.
It's but
they're the ones. They're like the early 20s, right?
yeah, early 20s. Yeah. I mean, I'd say that this is sort of prime for them, really, because it's easy to use. They can get everything really quick, and I think that's the thing. I think they expect things really quickly.
You'd be surprised. The average age of our clients right now is 47 years old.
It doesn't surprise me really, because they're the ones that probably want.
The typical client for us that want to use our services are professional, higher rate or additional rate taxpayer, very successful job, still probably got, a family, still got some kids at home, still very much holistic planning. So they're looking at pensions. So, they're starting to get a bit more serious about pension. They've hit their 40s. They're starting to go, actually, do you know what? I'm closer to 65 than 25 now. That's a very typical client for us, is a higher additional rate taxpayer. And the thing is, there's this whole concern around intergenerational wealth transfer in the industry at the moment. So I think a lot of people are sat on their books. And, we've been looking at a few acquisitions and things recently, and we're looking at these books, and the average age of a book is like 70 years old on the client bank. And the thing that they're not clocking is that we've already got the descendants on our books as clients. So these IFAs are not going to be keeping these clients.
It's almost like taking a...
Because they don't want someone coming round to the house and having to take the shoes off and make a cup of tea and get the good biscuits out. People our age, millennials, and even the Generation X or whatever they are above. I'm not very good with this generation thing. Generation X is the one above, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Generation X, millennials, we don't want people coming round to our house and having to hoover up, and we don't want it. Like, we've got used to doing absolutely everything off our
quickly
phone or on
online.
our laptop when we want to do it. And that's what Fintuity facilitate.
And then I reckon, my guess would be, is that you're probably going to go more... This will change, and you will probably become more mass market-ish, and you'll be able to deal with a lot more people as well. Like, at a guess, how many clients do you think an IFA can feasibly deal with at Fintuity?
Okay, so this is a really difficult question.
I thought it would be. That's why I asked it.
Mainly because I think if you ask the tech team that question, and when you ask me that question, I think the answers are very, very different.
So they'll come up with a higher figure.
Much higher figure. Yeah. I think in a traditional setting, if you have got more than 120 to 140 clients, you shouldn't have any more than that, because I don't think you're doing justice to the service that you're giving to your clients. Genuinely.
Yep.
Like these IFAs that I see where they're doing it a traditional way and they're looking after 200, 300 clients. You're not giving them a good level of service. I'm sorry. I don't personally believe that you are. I don't think you can service that appropriately. So I think it's about 120 to 140 is the sweet spot on the face. For me personally, I always capped it at 100. I never had more than 100. If all I would do, if I got I always used to tier my clients like ABC, and then...
What would you drop a few? Would you?
Yeah, I'd give them to the junior guys to go and look after.
Okay.
Yeah, all the new guys coming in. I'd just give every single year. I used to have a cull. They still got great service. Don't get me wrong, and I was still always there if they ever really needed me. But I would give them to the newer guys to go and look after and run. If you were to ask the tech team, they would reckon the number is like 300 or 400, which is theoretically doable. My argument would still be, I think if you're looking after 300 or 400 clients, I still don't think you're giving them a good enough level of service. It's probably closer to 200 if you're doing it our digital route.
It's still a lot of people to see, isn't it? I mean, even with 200, you're seeing nearly one person every single day.
It depends how keen you are. I mean, the way for my clients, I have a full annual meeting with them, but I will speak to them every single quarter. Now, sometimes that is just a quick 2-minute call to go, hey Jamie, everything okay? Anything you need at the moment? No, all good, Andy. Yeah, great, happy days. Let's move on. Speak to you again in 3 months' time. The difference with Fintuity as well is that we put that power in the client's hands. The client can go to their client portal. They can book a call with their advisor at any time. also means you've got to be a bit more careful about some of the clients that you take on.
Yeah, because
there are clients who, every time the market drops 2%, will be on the phone going, "Oh, I've seen the FTSE's down 2% this week. What are we going to do?" And the answer is, well, like the last time you asked me this, Mr. Client, we're not going to do anything because, weirdly enough, you never ring me when the market's up 2% in a week.
Yeah.
So that can be. I feel like that could be a little bit of a curse, but I feel like you can definitely do it easier through Fintuity. I think you could probably get to 200 comfortably, but like I said, the tech team would reckon 300 to 400, and you could probably do that if you were just doing like an annual check-in with a client, and it was maybe a bit more transactional rather than kind of the fuller service that I give to clients. I guess it depends what kind of business you want it to be. You could make it work at 300-400, but in my opinion, through Fintuity, 200 is probably the cap. Through a traditional model, I reckon the cap's 120, 140, which is very different to probably other answers in the industry, and definitely different to what is happening in the industry in some places.
Yeah, I'd agree. There are some people that are probably taking off more than they can chew.
Yeah.
Just wanted to round things off
Sure.
just by asking you what piece of advice you would give your young self, knowing what you know now after a quarter of a century in the profession.
Thanks. You're loving that, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Remind me never to come on this podcast again. Oh gosh, that is really difficult, and I've received so many good nuggets from other people. Nothing that I can say would be original. Everything has come from other people that I have worked with or been around, and I guess that's probably a piece of advice in itself, to be fair, is take heed of what other people are telling you and listen. I think I was probably very bullheaded in my first 10 years in this industry when I was in my 20s, that I thought I knew everything. I've always been reasonably confident, and sometimes that works to my detriment because I'm like, no, I know how to do this. I got this. In hindsight, I definitely didn't. I definitely didn't have it. And, I think I probably didn't listen enough to the good advice I was given earlier on in my career. So I would say be open to knowledge. You can learn something from absolutely everybody. And I truly believe, I'm the exact opposite now. Now I will listen and try to understand from absolutely everybody that I speak to, because I genuinely believe you can learn something from everybody. Sometimes you learn what not to do as well as what to do.
Yep.
But you can genuinely learn something from everybody. So, it's, for me, it is, don't ever assume that what you're doing now is the right thing. Take good advice. The one thing I'd say on a kind of a closing note is the one thing I do still believe, and we've had this conversation before, the one thing I do still believe about the financial services sector is I think it is still one of the few places where the work and energy that you put into it directly correlates with what you get out of it, emotionally, personally, financially. And I think there is still a really key distinction between that.
I think it's a fantastic point. It's almost like, I think sometimes people think that it's a bit of a dirty thing to talk about money. And I think, I'm going on to something completely different again, but I think for the profession itself, people need to know that in financial planning, you work hard, you will do really well. And I would argue that you look at where the profession is, I think things are different from 10 years ago.
For sure.
But I think you compare this job to being an accountant or a solicitor, you can make more money being a financial planner, a lot more money being a financial planner than you can be an accountant or a solicitor, in my humble opinion.
I agree. It doesn't come without work, though.
Exactly.
And that's the key thing of it all. I think that's, I've been self-employed for 17 of the last 21, 22 years, and it's it takes a lot of work. You know, if you're going self-employed for the first time, you've got to be prepared that the first 2 years are going to be really, really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. I don't think people realise just how hard it is to build a business. You're going to get kicked down. There's going to be times where you just think it's just not working. But perseverance is key. And if you do that, genuinely, as you say, you can have a really good career and financially rewarding, but also personally rewarding. You know, I'm lucky enough that I have clients that I have been working with and speaking to for 15, 16, 17, 18 years now. And when you get to physically see the difference that you have made, and you get those clients after like 5 years or 10 years turning around and saying to you, there's a great guy, one of the first guys I ever signed up in Hong Kong. I remember sitting down with him 4 years later. I'd met him in a bar, of all places. I remember we'd done some work. We'd helped him set up some like savings and stuff. And I remember him turning around to me 4 years later and just going, do you know what, Andy? I'm so glad that I met you 4 years later, because I've now got about 200 grand in this account. And if I hadn't met you, that would probably be all behind the tills in the bars. I'm like, you know, he had a good time. He was a young lad. And I'm like, and when you get that feedback and you get clients kind of saying, I'm so glad that I met you. I'm so glad we had that conversation. It makes you realise it's not just about the financial benefits, but it's about having a bit of a sense of pride over the job that you've done to help people.
Good note to leave it. No, thank you. Thank you so much for having the chat with me. It's been great.
No problem. It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Great conversation today with Andy Lumley-Holmes at Fintuity. Found out what's going on there, what's making them really exciting in the profession, and why they're going to be, I hope, a beacon for what needs to be done in the profession. In addition to that as well, we also found out about his career as well. Really interesting insight into what's been going on there and what he's done. And he's got some great experience there. Let me know what you think. If you liked the conversation that I had with Andy, share it with somebody else. Let me know what you think, and thanks for listening.